Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sportlight podcast. Dustin, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Shad. Good to hear from you.
You too. I know you're on the road. You're left really early this morning to go speak to some schools down in southern Utah, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, I'm about halfway to St. George, Utah, speaking to two schools today and another one tomorrow. Those from Utah know that's about a 3 or 4 hour drive from the Salt Lake Provo area. And we've got several schools down there that we work with, and so I'll be visiting with them here in a couple hours. So I hope that I'm just driving in my truck here. I hope that the background noise isn't too bad.
No, it sounds good to me. Appreciate you joining us down driving as you drive, and so pay attention to that road.
I will.
So, well, Dustin, it's Thanksgiving week, and this is a time when all of us are thinking about the things that we're grateful for. And as we go around and meet with athletes around the country, we really try to help them think outside of themselves and to realize that even though they get a lot of attention, that everyone in the world matters just as much as they do, and to keep their eyes up and look for people who they could help, and to do the work to help those people and to use their position as an athlete to do that. And one of the things that we train on very frequently is the principle of gratitude. And so I thought for today's podcast, we could focus it on that principle of gratitude, and specifically some people in athletes' lives that maybe they could concentrate this week on expressing gratitude for, and us parents who care so deeply about sports and athletics and what it does for our children, that we might be able to do the same. And so I was thinking maybe I could bring up some groups of people and just get your thoughts on gratitude for these different people in our athletes' lives.
Yeah, perfect.
Sweet. The first one is that athletes should be grateful for their peers. The people who come to their games, the band, the cheerleaders, the drill teams that perform at their half times. I would just love to know your thoughts on those people who come out, their peers, their friends that come out and support them in their athletics.
Well, most parents and most athletes experienced a world without that last year during the shutdown of public gatherings and things. Some states and countries had nothing altogether. In Utah, we were one of a handful of states that still kept high school sports going. It was very, restricted and regulated as far as people showing and participation numbers and different things. And even that, as great as it was to be able to play, it was awesome. Everybody felt just the difference in energy and excitement in not being able to have people there. And so I think everybody experienced last year, if you were around sports, the withdrawal that comes from not having it, not just being at games and playing in games, but even able to watch games, not having them on TV, not being able to come home and, late at night when you wanted to relax, turning on your favorite team and watching them play. It was just a weird time, and I think we all gained an added appreciation and gratitude for just the beauty of sports and what it brings to our lives and society and everything, and in all its different forms. So, that was, there's not a lot of good that's come from the pandemic, but I think maybe an appreciation of sports team, I guess, is one. But when you talk about the peers and everything that goes into an event, creating that atmosphere that really are what makes sports so fun. The sport itself is great, but it's not just the sport. If it was just the sport, we'd get a bunch of our friends and we'd go over to the park and have a football game or play a baseball game and get as much joy out of that as we do for, competing in front of people, and which obviously we don't. It's a lot more exciting and fun to do it in front of people and to have your fans and crowd, family there supporting and feel like you're playing for representing a group of people, your community, your school. But there's I would encourage everybody, I know people have traditions they do during the week of Thanksgiving. We talk a lot about, obviously, this topic, family, gratitude, and thankfulness and things. There is a great interview. NPR Radio did it. It's based actually on a TED Talk by an author named A.J. Jacobs, and it's called The Gratitude Chain. I would encourage everybody, if you want a great 15-minute listen, go listen to The Gratitude Chain, or even better, the NPR interview with the author about that talk. And not to, not to cover that entire message, but some things that listening to that actually a couple years ago that come to mind as you ask that question, Shad, when you talk about let's just say a basketball game, all of the different, the chain of things that happen, that link together to create that atmosphere. If you really go down the chain and you start looking at the details, somebody had to take care of making sure that the basketball court was clean and that the paint was taken care of, and that the varnish and everything was done on the court so it looked nice, and that the playability of the court was, it wasn't slippery, that the speakers worked, that the scoreboard worked. Somebody probably took time to double check that, to make a call to somebody to come and check the lights on the scoreboard, to make sure the speaker sounded clear, to make sure the basketballs were there and ordered and new and pumped up. And somebody had to show up early to get the ticket gate ready, set up a table and have the change ready to give to people when they checked in, and to open up the concession stand and make sure that the food was being cooked and ready to serve to people. Cheerleaders spent hours and hours preparing a routine that would help excite the crowd and bring energy at timeouts and at halftime. The referees had to be called and notified of the game and where to go and what to do when they got there. An athletic director, had to call the other team and talk to their bus driver about where to park, where to enter, and where their locker room was. And there's so much that goes in to putting on a game to create that atmosphere that most kids never think about. All they think about is the game and the energy. But there's so many little pieces. And so I think in part to your question about how can we be grateful and how can we show great gratitude, I think it starts by noticing. It starts by being aware. We would call that eyes up, but noticing the details and appreciating the details that go into creating that environment. And then I guess the do the work, portion of that would be then to show our appreciation by thanking people, literally shaking hands and looking people in the eyes and thanking them, because we appreciate what they do, and we appreciate it when we take time to notice, and to notice specifically the little things, the little details that go into creating that environment. And but really the do the work portion of when we say eyes up, do the work, there's the noticing, but the work is really making a conscious effort to go and thank somebody for what they do. And that's the hard part in life in general, is to go and really thank a person. But there's so much power in showing thanks, and so much benefit that we get in our own lives when we show gratitude. Literally physical benefits. We sleep better. Studies show that we're less depressed. We're less anxious. We'll sleep better. We'll be healthier when we are regularly expressing gratitude to others, and for the things we've been given. There's some physical and emotional benefits that come from that. But yeah, I'd say notice, appreciate, and then do the work by verbally thanking people for what they've done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I agree with everything you said. There's one other aspect that I've been thinking about a lot lately since we did that podcast with Allie Bills, and we were talking about women's athletics and how it's less supported and sometimes even mocked by others. And she said something to me that just kind of burned into my brain when I asked her about people kind of mocking the Chicago Sky and the lack of people at their parade. And she said, "Oh, Shad, us girls, we're used to playing in front of empty gyms." And that kind of made me sad to hear her say that. And I thought, here's these football players, basketball players, and, packed stands on a Friday night, the whole time a football team is playing, and basketball, the boys' basketball games. There's all of these fans there making this atmosphere. And I just think one of the things, here's maybe a message to you boy athletes out there. One of the ways that you could express gratitude for all the people going to your games and creating that atmosphere is by returning the favor. Their time isn't any less valuable than your time. And so to go as a team and to cheer for a girls' basketball game, a volleyball game, a soccer game, to get together as a team and go to a play or to a drill competition or a cheer competition. And I think that's one way to show gratitude to people is by doing to them what you are grateful that they do to you and or for you. And so I love those thoughts, Dustin. I just think that creates, when athletes catch that vision of being grateful for everyone, the administration, those who set up the gym, their friends, the band, all of those things, it just creates such a wonderful unified atmosphere in a school. And so I think expressing gratitude for those things, and I love how you express that. The first step is noticing and then feeling gratitude, but that's half the battle. Expressing it is the do the work part. So awesome. Well,
it can get difficult for all of us to notice because, by human nature, we're creatures of habit. And when we habitualize things in our lives, our brain does that automatically to help us be able to remember and store and just do more. Certain things become habits for us, right? Most of us don't think in detail about the car ride to work or to school or whatever. We just do it. We've done it so many times we do it without really focusing because it's become, habit for us. And when we get used to certain things and they get stored and become habit in our brain, then it's harder to notice we've moved on to something else. And so over the time of growing up, when you've always had a nice pair of shoes to play basketball in, you've always had a ride to practice, you've always had a nice gym, a nice basketball in your bag, and a coach who maybe was a good coach since you were little. Not everybody has all these things. When you have those things, they just become normal to you. They're habits in your life. It becomes harder to notice until we step away for a second, look back, and look at the details of everything that's in our life that makes it what it is. And I think nowadays, with things being so comfortable for kids and for the most part easy for kids, most kids have pretty nice, facilities to play in and uniforms. And I remember going to my son's baseball game years ago when he was 11 or 12 and watching kids walk in. In fact, I took a picture of it, might have sent it to you or some other college teammates of ours. But I said, these 11-year-old kids have nicer uniforms and nicer bags than we had in college. And these are $150 bags that simply carry their 2 bats that they each have, and their batting helmet that they each have, and their $150 glove, and $100 cleats, and it's crazy. And if that's all that these kids are brought up knowing, they don't realize that that's not how it is for everybody, and that there's so many people to thank and be grateful that they're able to enjoy the way they have it. But the key then, like we mentioned, and like you just covered again, is, okay, well, now what? So you're grateful. The key is, how do you show it? And what are the benefits of doing so for not only the person that we thank, but there's personal benefits in our own life from being grateful and showing gratitude that we can all benefit from.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Okay, you ready for the second topic? And of course, there's going to be a lot of carryover. So these next 3, but teammates, gratitude for teammates. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I you and I have had this discussion. I believe that even more, it might be a personal thing, but to me, I love the sports, and all the ones I've played over the years or coached over the years, I love the actual sport. But if I'm, completely honest, it's the doing the sport with a friend, and the competing with a friend. And when you say teammate, I think it's important to emphasize that word, teammate, not team member. When I'm a teammate of somebody, that's different than just being a member of the team with somebody. When I'm really their mate or their friend, and you really create that bond with a person because of sports, we should be, first of all, extremely grateful that it was the sport that brought us together. It was our love for that sport that brought us together and then created, a friendship. We were able to become teammates with somebody. And when sports ends, the game oftentimes continues. You can still go play basketball. You can still go find, a tennis match, or, even softball games or a baseball game or something to participate in. But it's never quite the same, because just playing the game, as fun as it is, it's not the same. And anybody who's been a part of a team sport, especially, or you've competed with somebody that you really respected and learned to love, it's not the same. It's a totally different experience doing it with a teammate that you loved and cared for and sacrificed with. And so being grateful for teammates, it might be hard in the moment, but anybody who's played it, and all, as parents and coaches listening to this, we can all tell our players or our sons and daughters that they're going to miss that. So I think the more that we can encourage them to soak that up and to try to understand that it's not always going to be there, the better. But, I, again, touching on gratitude, Shad, I'd say that, happy people, there's a difference between being happy and being grateful. That, happy people are usually the people who are grateful. It's sometimes the people that have every bit of reason to be happy, they aren't happy. They have everything given them. They should be happy when you look at everything that they've got at their fingertips. But the reason they're not happy is because maybe they haven't understood to be grateful. But usually people who are grateful are happy. Does that make sense? So I think that I wouldn't say that gratitude comes from happiness. I would say that, happiness comes from being grateful. Some people who don't seem to have a lot in their life, some athletes who don't seem to have the best circumstances, are oftentimes the happiest because they're grateful. Those that follow us on social media may see a post that we did a post a couple weeks ago of some kids standing on a podium, and the first place winner was looking at the second place winner, and they're 2 kids. And the second place winner is holding their second place trophy up with a big happy smile on their face, where the first place winner is crying looking at that second place person, because it's all in the mindset that you're in. You may have won first place, but not be happy. Yeah. Where the second place person has understood gratitude. And when you go out and fight with your teammates and you're grateful for them because you realize all that they're sacrificing to try to accomplish the same things that you're going for, then I think you show gratitude by caring about them and indulging in their lives and what's really going on in their life outside of sports. And you become a real teammate when you become interested in them on and off the court or off the field, and they know they can lean on you the rest of their life. And sports, team sports in particular, provide that atmosphere for us if we'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that teammates in sports, at least in my life, and I know I'm not alone in this, that the best friends I have in my life right now are my teammates from the past, and the ones that I struggled with and sweat with and bled with and was disappointed with, and who, encouraged me and picked me up after a bad play or a bad game or whatever, who celebrated with me when we were victorious. To quote the great Andy Bernard, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. One way to be a grateful teammate right now is to realize that you are in some of the greatest moments of your life as you go to battle with your teammates, and just to soak that in and enjoy the ups and the downs together, because that creates bonds that will last forever. So okay, man. Third one, grateful for coaches and their families. Maybe I'll lead out on this one, Dustin, because you're a coach, but but let me just say, when you get on the other side and you start coaching, and I've seen, as you've coached this high school team, all that's gone into it, the time, the arrangements, the personal interest that a coach shows in kids. And when there's 75 kids, you show interest for 10% of those in a given week. You're talking about hours and hours of a week. And I've watched Jamie, your wife, has been there, supported, and all the time you spend away from the family and all the time that they spend picking up the pieces. And there's that on the high school level. And then you come down to these peewee coaches, and they're, volunteering and doing their best. And while some parents are pulling up in a van and dropping off a kid and telling them good luck and to try hard and pulling away, this person's there for hours, and they're spending time helping those kids develop, not only athletically, but personally, and being there so they can learn those lessons. And noticing that. So, man, coaches get so much crud from parents and complaints and yells and all the mistakes they make during a game. And sometimes I think we would all be well to pause and to recognize that all coaches, and I would say from high school down, they aren't getting paid enough to do what they do. They're there because they love the kids. They love the sport. They love the lessons and the impact that it has. And I think we'd all do well to pause, to recognize, to notice, to reflect on that, and to take some time to show gratitude for it instead of just complaint at the things we wish were done better.
Yeah. Well, there's, in life in general, if we want to always look for the warts on a person, or the mistakes, or the mess ups in a person's life, you can find them. And if you want to focus on those, make that the focus of your opinion for that person, your respect for that person. It's very easy that you don't have to look very hard at most people to find some sort of weakness or fault in them. And that's a sad way to live life. But I think, unfortunately, a lot of us do that. In the case of coaches, sure, there are coaches who aren't great coaches. There are a lot of coaches that are very good coaches who maybe, just like, our sons and daughters sometimes miss a free throw. Sometimes coaches make a bad decision in a game, and they know they do. They don't need to have 1,000 people telling them they do. They know it. They're their hardest critic. The good ones, at least, the good coaches are. And so it doesn't make them a better coach to have to go home and be messaged or, hear something said about him in public or something, shared online or to another person about their mistake. They know they made it. And a lot of times these decisions are made, have a whole lot of time to think about the decision you make. You have to make it. At the same time, when kids play well, usually the coach looks good. I know as a coach, I've made bad decisions as a coach and actually come out looking really good because the players executed really well and made me look good. Other times I've made really good decisions as a coach, made the right call at the right time, or handled a situation with a young man the right way. I felt like I did it the right way, and it's and it's not executed well, and the coach is a bum. And so that's just how it is. And so part of team sports is you're all in together, and but most people, they see the glorified coach at the end of the victory, and people want to be a coach until it's time to do what coaches do, especially behind the scenes. The baseball field doesn't just chalk itself. Somebody has to put the foul lines in the batter's box, right? And someone has to unload their truck, and some dad is carrying buckets of baseballs and bats and helmets back and forth from his truck in his garage to practice. And he's doing it over and over and over again. A high school coach, somebody has to organize hundreds of jerseys, shoulder pads, and helmets and order stuff. Make sure things are there on time and that the paint color is the right color and that the sizes correctly match and the numbers. There's so many other things that go in before you even get to scheming, to game planning. Worrying about a kid's grades, worrying about his citizenship at school, I've had discussions with young men about girlfriends, about family life troubles, about grades, about career decisions after school, college decisions, stuff that has nothing to do with the sport. You have to be a doctor at times and be able to gauge a kid. Does he need to go on concussion protocol? Is he sick? Is he mental health? How's he doing mentally? There's so many things that these coaches are asked to be really professionals at, that when they make a mistake in a game and they don't play your son as much as you think, or your son doesn't get as many plays called for him as you think, or your daughter doesn't bat in the lineup where you think she should bat, to be a little bit patient and a little bit more grateful for all the time and energy that is put into giving your son or daughter what they have and the good that they do get, I think would be wise on all of us. And it'd make it more, honestly, Shad, it'll make it more of an enjoyable experience. I think you would agree that as human beings, we're usually happier when we're thinking about other people than we are when we're focused on ourselves. When we focus on ourselves, that's when we usually find ourselves, at least me, I'm in a bad mood when my focus is on me. When I'm constantly selfishly worried about me, I find myself not as happy. When I'm interested in others and seeing them be happy and, and sincerely, grateful for others in my life and what they bring to me, my life's better. I'm happier. I look at life differently. And I think if we were to look at coaches and the good that they do, and their wives and what they sacrifice for that coach, their spouse, husband or wife, I think it would make the experience more joyful for us as parents. As hard as it might be if our kid's not playing as much or whatever, we'd still find that at least they're on the team and they have somewhere to be today after school, and they're with somebody who cares for them and is, interested in them. And I think it would make the experience more enjoyable for all of us if we were to, again, back to what I said earlier, if we would notice the little things and appreciate it, and then hopefully at some point do the work to actually show the gratitude by thanking that coach or that coach's spouse.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, what you're saying is reminiscent of what Doug Meacham talked about. He talked about an experience he had where he went to a summer tournament and he was trying to get all the kids in, and toward the end of the game, and there was one that didn't play as much as he would have liked, that Doug would have liked. And especially, I'm sure the kid, from his point of view, he would have liked to have played more. And he saw the kid talking to his parents in the tunnel there. And all of a sudden the kid turns around and comes back to him. And he thought, oh man, here we go. I'm going to have this conversation. And the kid shook his hand and said, Coach, thank you for the marvelous experience this weekend. It's been wonderful. And walked away. And Doug was like, man, that just felt so good, because it was so, he's had so many different kinds of conversations. And so I'm sure that dad was coaching that young man how to handle his feelings of disappointment. And so that's what a great example for parents to, in that moment when a kid is frustrated, one of the things we might be able to do to take away that frustration and to bring feelings of joy and at least less disappointment is, hey, go tell your coach, thank you. They took a lot of time for you. That would be a great response from a parent to an athlete. All right, man. The fourth one, maybe most important, gratitude. These athletes grateful for their parents. What thoughts do you have on athletes being grateful for their parents?
Probably the hardest, but yeah, like you said, the most important. The reason I think it's the hardest is that, you know, it's difficult as a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old kid to really have perspective at how hard it is to be a parent and the sacrifices that a parent's making, because I think we oftentimes as kids just think our parents have nothing else to do but drive us to practice and games and nothing else to pay for except for our registration dues and cleats and, you know, baseball bats and things. And then when you become a parent, you realize that's not the case. So, you know, I think taking a minute, you know, and this might be something coaches can do. It probably hard for parents. I have you know, as a parent myself, I have a hard time convincing my kids they need to be thankful for their mom or me. But, you know, I think as a coach, when we can say, hey, do you realize how much your mom and dad have gone through to give you this opportunity? And again, you thank them with your words, but you thank them with your actions and how you represent them when you're here. What kind of young man or young women are you? Do you look your coach in the eye? Do you say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am? Or do you do something simple like, Coach, let me help you clean the field. Let me get the ball back into the closet or back into your truck, you know, and you carry it. Do you write, you know, little things that you might do to help the coach? Can you do the same thing for your parent, you know, to show your gratitude for your parent? When you come home from the baseball game, and you take the seats out of the trunk of the car that your mom brought for everybody to sit in, and you go reload it in the garage, or, you know, help, you know, come home instead of going right down in your room and closing the door, getting on your phone. Can you help mom with something around the house? Or can you do that chore that dad's been asking you to do? And just because, you know, you love him and you're grateful for him. And so verbally thanking him, but I'd say more so representing them in a positive light, but also showing your gratitude by doing the work to assist and help mom and dad is the way that mom and dad really feel like, all right, you know, my son or my daughter really appreciates what I'm going through. And, you know, any athletes who do listen to this podcast, to understand that your mom and dad have other issues that are much more pressing in their life than whether or not, you know, you got a base hit or not today, and recognizing that in their life and acknowledging that, you know, that they do a lot goes a long way with your mom or your dad.
I thank you, Dustin. One thing to the parents listening to this that we all know, and this is telling them what they already know, but I do think sometimes the thank yous come later. Sometimes teenagers are a little bit myopic in their view of life, but it seems that with age, it distills upon them what their parents did and what their parents sacrificed in order for them to be able to do the things they love. And then as they feel the development that came from sports and realize that those opportunities that their parents sometimes took second jobs for and took time for and came home from a job, threw on different clothes and went out to go coach them so that they could have a good experience. Those things are like time bombs sometimes. And when they go off, it just explodes into gratitude toward them from their youth, their children, that sometimes it doesn't happen until a little bit later. But to the athletes who are listening to this, your parents love you so incredibly much, to the point that you having disappointments in games breaks their heart. You know, Dustin, you and I sat there next to each other at a drill competition, and there's some moves that our daughters were nervous about, both of our daughters, and on separate teams. But you and I are sitting there in the aisle, knowing the move is coming up. And when they hit the move, you know, I still remember last year, you and I giving each other a high five and even getting teary-eyed that, oh man, they did it. They made it through it. And to realize that's what your parents are feeling for you, and the sacrifices they make, the early mornings, waking up and helping you get off and do all those things. It's just, I hope everyone will pause and express gratitude. And even to the adults who are listening to this, maybe it would be good for us to reflect upon all those things our parents did for us. And now that we're doing them, maybe we realize the sacrifice that went into it a little bit better. And if we haven't expressed that, Thanksgiving time's a great time to do the work and thank our parents for all that they've done for us. So Dustin, thank you, man. I couldn't do a podcast on gratitude with you here on our podcast without expressing appreciation to you and all you do for me and my family, and all you do for so many people around the country as you go and passionately share this message with people. So thank you so much for the difference you're making.
Likewise, Shad. I've known you since college, and I've learned to appreciate more and more the real tight friendships that you have. You have a handful of people that are just your people, your trench hole, people that you have in battle, and you're one of those for me, man. And so I appreciate you and your family, and likewise for all the good that you do, and a lot that people don't know, other lives that you're involved in helping outside of what you do with, especially for athletes. And so thank you, brother, and have a great Thanksgiving to everybody. Eyes up to the work, and thankful for everybody, all these kids. I got the best gig in the world, and get to go down and talk to a bunch of awesome kids today and see the future of our country and of our world. And I'm telling you, every time I go and speak, I leave more and more optimistic about where we're headed, what's going on, and that less interested in all the negativity that's out there, because I just don't buy into it. I buy into the good that I see, and that's the kids I see and the coaches and administrators I see at these schools, that we have some great youth coming up and a great world to look forward to with them in charge of it. And so, I'm thankful for them this Thanksgiving. So, and to you, brother. So have a great Thanksgiving, and everybody, eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.